Some places are designed to organize things, but what happens when a place decides to organize you? Maya's scanner beeped in the darkness, the sound echoing off towering shelves that stretched beyond her flashlight's reach. 3 a.m. at Megamart's distribution center meant she had the entire warehouse to herself. 40,000 square feet of inventory to count before dawn. She'd done this shift hundreds of times. Walk the grid, scan the barcodes, update the system. Simple. The overnight differential paid well enough to make the isolation worth it, and Maya had always preferred working alone anyway. Order made sense to her. Systems made sense. Aisle 7 stretched ahead of her, packed floor to ceiling with boxes of kitchen appliances. Her scanner chirped as she worked down the row. Toasters, blenders, coffee makers. Each beep confirmed what the system already knew was there. Everything in its place, exactly as it should be. Except when she checked her tablet, a 7 showed as uncounted. Maya frowned at the screen. The green check mark she'd just watched appear was gone. According to the system, she hadn't been to this aisle at all tonight. She looked back at the shelves she'd just scanned. Coffee makers on the left, toasters on the right, exactly as they should be. Exactly as she'd just counted them. She rescanned the first item. The system accepted it, updating the count. Must have been a glitch. The handheld units were old, prone to losing connection. Maya made a mental note to mention it to Davis when he came in at 6. Moving to a 8, she let her routine take over. Scan, beep, move. The fluorescent lights hummed overhead, casting harsh shadows between the towering shelves. Her footsteps echoed in the vast space, accompanied by the distant rumble of the building's heating system. 8 through a 12 went smoothly. Maya found herself relaxing into the familiar rhythm. This was why she liked the night shift. No customers, no managers breathing down her neck, just her and the endless rows of merchandise. Peaceful, in its own methodical way. She turned into aisle B1 and stopped. The layout was wrong. Not obviously wrong, just wrong enough to make her skin crawl. The shelving units seemed taller than they should be, stretching up into shadows that her overhead lights couldn't quite penetrate. And the distance between rows felt stretched, like someone had taken the familiar space and pulled it taffy thin. Maya shook her head. 4 hours of sleep before this shift. That was her problem. Fatigue was making the familiar look strange. She'd grab coffee from the break room after this section, but as she walked down B1, scanning cleaning supplies, she couldn't shake the feeling that the aisle was longer than it should be. Much longer. Her tablet showed her position correctly, but her feet told her she'd been walking for twice as long as usual. When she finally reached the end of the row, Maya turned back to look at the path she'd just traveled. Under the harsh fluorescent lights, aisle B1 looked perfectly normal. 20 feet of shelving, same as always. So why had it felt like walking through a tunnel that stretched into forever? By B7, Maya knew something was seriously wrong. 3 more aisles showed as uncounted despite her having just finished them. But more disturbing were the ones that showed as counted, aisles she hadn't been to yet. According to her tablet, she'd already inventoried sections D through F, clear across the warehouse. She pulled out her phone and called the security office. No answer. Davis wouldn't be in for another 2 hours, but there should be a guard on duty. There was always a guard on duty. Maya tried to remember the last time she'd seen another person in the building. Thompson had been here when she'd clocked in at 11, but he'd left for his patrol rounds, and she hadn't seen him since. The parking lot had been empty except for her car when she'd arrived. She walked faster now, her scanner beeping in rapid succession as she moved through C-section. The shelves seemed to press closer, and the spaces between them felt narrower than before. When she looked up, the ceiling lights created a tunnel of brightness that seemed to stretch endlessly ahead. At C12, Maya stopped and turned around. The aisle behind her looked different. The boxes weren't stacked the same way. Products she'd just scanned were in different positions, and the distance back to where she'd started seemed impossible. She could barely make out the far end through the shadows. Her hands were shaking as she pulled out her phone again. No signal. There was always a signal in the warehouse. The cell tower was right across the highway. Maya forced herself to breathe slowly. Think logically. The inventory system was glitching. Her phone was having issues. She was tired and disoriented. All explainable. Systems had logical problems with logical solutions. She decided to head back to the security office to check in with whoever was on duty. The office was in the front of the building, near the loading docks. She oriented herself and started walking. But after 5 minutes of walking, she was deeper in the warehouse than before. The aisles stretched endlessly in both directions, packed with merchandise that seemed to shift when she wasn't looking directly at it. The overhead lights created pools of harsh brightness separated by stretches of deep shadow. Maya broke into a jog, then a run. Aisle letters and numbers blurred past. E15, F22, G31. Numbers that shouldn't exist. The warehouse only went to section M, and the highest number was 20. She stopped running when she realized the footsteps weren't stopping with her. In the silence, she could hear them clearly, her own footfalls echoing back from the shelves around her. But the echoes were wrong. They came too late, from the wrong directions. Like someone was following her path, step by step, but delayed by several seconds. Maya turned slowly. The aisle behind her stretched into darkness. Empty. But she could still hear the footsteps, matching her breathing, synchronized with her heartbeat. She looked at her scanner. According to the display, she was in aisle Q47, scanning automotive parts. But the shelves around her were stocked with children's toys. And according to the system, she'd been in this exact spot for the past 4 hours, scanning the same items over and over and over. The footsteps stopped when she looked at the screen, but something else started instead. A low, mechanical humming that seemed to come from the shelves themselves, like the sound of a vast sorting machine processing endless inventory. Maya ran blindly through the maze of shelves, her scanner bouncing against her hip, its screen flickering between impossible locations. The aisles stretched and twisted around her, creating corridors that shouldn't exist, paths that led nowhere and everywhere at once. She turned left and found herself in an aisle identical to the one she'd just left. Same products, same shelving, same harsh fluorescent lights humming overhead. But her scanner showed a different location, ENS 99, a designation that was mathematically impossible. The mechanical humming was getting louder. It seemed to emanate from the very structure of the building, as if the warehouse itself had become some massive sorting machine. Maya could feel the vibration in her bones, in her teeth. She tried to retrace her steps, but every turn led her deeper into the labyrinth. The aisles had become a grid with no exit, stretching in perfect geometric patterns that folded back on themselves. When she looked up, she could see multiple levels of shelving extending impossibly high, each level identical to the one below. That's when she saw herself. At the far end of the aisle, barely visible in the shadows between the overhead lights, another Maya was scanning products, moving with the same mechanical precision, scanner beeping in the same rhythm. But this other Maya moved wrong, too smooth, too regular, like a machine programmed to imitate human movement. Maya called out. The other figure didn't respond, didn't even look up, just continued scanning, beep by beep, working through inventory with inhuman efficiency. She moved closer and saw more of them. In parallel aisles, visible through gaps in the shelving, dozens of Mayas were conducting inventory, all moving in perfect synchronization, all scanning the same products in the exact same sequence. The scanner in her hand beeped. She looked down. She hadn't scanned anything, but according to the display, she'd just recorded another item. The screen showed her location as multiple aisles simultaneously, her count increasing steadily even though she was standing still. The warehouse was scanning her. Maya threw the scanner away and ran, but the beeping continued. It was coming from everywhere now, from the shelves, from the ceiling, from the concrete floor beneath her feet. Each beep marked another item catalogued, another piece of inventory processed and sorted. She wasn't counting the merchandise anymore. She was the merchandise. The realization hit her like a physical blow. Every night, coming in alone, walking the same patterns, scanning the same items, training the system, teaching it her behavior, her movements, her exact specifications. She was inventory being processed, studied, cataloged. and now she was being sorted. The walls around her shifted with each beep of the invisible scanners. The aisles rearranged themselves, creating new configurations, new storage patterns. Maya was being moved through the system like any other item, guided toward her designated location. She could see it ahead of her, an empty shelf space, perfectly sized for a human being, labeled with a barcode and an employee number she recognized as her own. The space was waiting for her, ready to complete the inventory. Maya screamed, and the sound echoed back from 100 aisles, 100 versions of herself, all screaming in perfect unison as the warehouse continued its relentless sorting. Dawn light filtered through the warehouse skylights as Maya found herself standing at the loading dock exit. The heavy metal door was propped open, letting in the cool morning air and the distant sound of highway traffic. Normal sounds. Human sounds. She stumbled outside into the parking lot, gasping. Her car sat exactly where she'd left it 8 hours ago. The security cameras tracked her movement with mechanical precision, red lights blinking steadily. Everything looked perfectly ordinary. Maya checked her phone. 6:47 a.m. She had 17 missed calls from Davis, increasingly frantic voicemails asking where she was, why she wasn't answering, whether she was all right. According to her phone, she'd been unreachable for the entire shift, but her scanner was still in her hand. She looked at the display. According to the system, she'd completed the full inventory. Every aisle, every section, every item. 40,000 square feet of merchandise, all accounted for. The timestamp showed continuous activity from 11 p.m. to 6 a.m. No breaks, no pauses, no time when she wasn't scanning. The efficiency was impossible. Even working at inhuman speed, she couldn't have covered that much ground in a single shift. Davis's truck pulled into the parking lot as Maya stood there staring at the scanner. He jumped out, jogging over with obvious relief on his face. "Jesus, Maya, where the hell were you? I've been trying to reach you all night. Security cameras lost you around midnight. You just vanished from all the feeds." Maya looked back at the warehouse. Through the loading dock doors, she could see the familiar rows of shelving stretching into the distance. Everything was exactly as it should be. Normal spacing between aisles. Normal height shelving. Normal fluorescent lighting. "I was doing the inventory," she said. Davis frowned at her scanner. "That's impossible. This says you covered the entire warehouse. That's a 3-person job minimum. And look at this." He scrolled through the data, his frown deepening. "According to this, you scanned section 7 437 times. The same exact sequence, over and over." Ugh. Maya's skin went cold. "That's not possible. The system thinks you've been standing in the same spot all night, scanning the same products repeatedly. But the total inventory shows complete coverage." Davis looked up at her with concern. "Maya, are you feeling okay? You look like you've seen a ghost." "Yeah, sure." "Moo." She took the scanner from him and scrolled through the data herself. Pages and pages of entries, all from a 7. Coffee makers, toasters. The same items, scanned hundreds of times in perfect sequence. But somehow, impossibly, every other section showed complete inventory as well. At bottom of the file was a single additional entry. A new barcode she didn't recognize, followed by a description that made her hands shake. Item: employee, #44/71. Location: processed. Status: catalogued. Condition: available for redistribution. Employee #4471 was her number. Maya handed the scanner back to Davis and walked to her car without another word. As she drove away, she looked in her rearview mirror and saw him standing in the parking lot, staring at the scanner display with growing confusion. She never went back to work. But sometimes, driving past the warehouse at night, she could see lights moving inside, systematic, methodical patterns of illumination working through the aisles. And if she listened carefully, she could hear the distant sound of scanning equipment beeping steadily as the inventory continued its eternal count.